It all began with a broken lamp. Isn't that how these stories always unfold? Something trivial, something insignificant, something everyone else forgets except for me. I remember it all too well. The lamp was a wedding gift from her aunt. Hideous, lopsided, casting this strange greenish hue that made the room feel off even when it was on. I brushed against it one morning while grabbing my shoes, and it came crashing down. She sighed as if I'd demolished something far more valuable than an eyesore. Her gaze never left her phone. "Of course you break everything," she muttered dismissively. I stood there frozen, broom in hand, staring at the shards scattered across the floor. In that moment, I wondered how long someone could feel like a piece of furniture in their own home before they stopped functioning altogether. That was Tuesday. By Saturday, I found myself surrounded by strangers in our living room, people who smiled too hard and clutched their wine glasses like props in some performance art. It was her crowd, her world. And once again, I was relegated to being the accessory, wearing the shirt she picked out for me, nodding politely at faces I'd never see again. Everything seemed fine until it wasn't. She stood near the center of the room, holding a glass of rosé, laughing with 3 of her yoga friends. I lingered nearby, not close enough to join the conversation, but not distant enough to be invisible either. Then she said it. "He's afraid to even hug me." My body froze. For a moment, I didn't think I blinked. Her friends giggled nervously, feeding into the awkward energy. And then I did something I never do. I spoke up, loudly. "Unlike your trainer, right?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Her smile faltered mid-sip, cracking like fragile glass. One of her friends actually gasped. Slowly, she turned toward me, her expression morphing into something unreadable, a mix of shock and guilt. Truth has a way of slicing through noise, and suddenly the entire room fell silent. No music, no chatter, just the deafening void where sound used to be. People talk about silence as though it's peaceful, but this was different. This was the kind of silence that screams without making a sound. Her friends suddenly became intensely interested in their drinks, avoiding eye contact. One of them edged away quietly, as though leaving might erase what had just happened. Melina remained rooted in place, her wineglass tilted precariously, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. But she should have seen it coming. She should have known months ago. I'd started noticing things, small details at first. Her phone always face down on the counter, her workout sessions stretching longer than usual. One evening, she returned home practically glowing, claiming she'd just finished a deep tissue stretch session. Like a fool, I believed her. But I wasn't ready to confront any of it, not until she humiliated me in front of others. That comment, dripping with passive aggression, wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. It was a cover-up, a distraction. And in that charged moment, I realized the truth. Hurt doesn't disappear. It sits quietly, waiting for its chance to surface. When the words spilled out of me, they came from a place I didn't know existed, a place where years of pain had been quietly accumulating. As we stood there, suspended in time, I saw the look in her eyes, not surprise, but recognition. She knew she'd been caught. That evening, my comment about being afraid to hug her wasn't just inappropriate, it was telling. Only someone with something to hide would make such a remark loud enough for others to overhear. It was as if she needed to shift the blame before anyone could even question her. And here's the thing, I wasn't certain about the trainer. It was just a bitter suspicion gnawing at me. But when our eyes met in that silent room, her reaction confirmed everything I feared. Not guilt or confusion, but sheer panic.
She quickly masked it, hissing my name and gripping my arm so tightly it left a bruise. "Can we talk outside?" Of course, away from prying eyes and curious ears. Without a word, I followed, playing the role of the obedient husband I'd always been expected to be. We stepped into the backyard, and before the door fully closed, she erupted. "What the hell was that? Are you trying to destroy my career? My reputation? You don't say things like that in public." I stared at her for what felt like an eternity. For the first time in years, I saw a stranger standing before me. Her anger wasn't rooted in embarrassment over the accusation. It stemmed from fury that I dared voice it aloud. "You know what?" I said softly. "You're not denying it." Her lips parted, and she froze. Then came the deflection. "Do you have any idea how insane you sound? I can't believe I brought you here tonight." "No," I replied calmly. "You brought me because your usual +1 canceled. You needed a prop, and I happened to be available." That struck a nerve. I saw her flinch, and in that moment I knew I'd hit the truth. She didn't yell or throw anything. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked back inside, leaving me standing alone in a stranger's yard. I stood there, under the dim glow of garden lights, wondering how many years I'd spent fading into invisibility. Just like that, my night ended, not theirs. I didn't leave immediately. I lingered outside, staring blankly at the twinkling lights, pretending I wasn't shaking. It wasn't the cold, it was the weight of everything else. 8 years of swallowing my words, shrinking myself to fit within her world. Now that I'd finally spoken up, I couldn't unhear how hollow my voice sounded. I couldn't erase the way she looked at me, as though I were a once docile dog that had finally snapped. Eventually, I decided to walk home. Yes, walk. She drove us there, and I didn't bother asking for the keys. I simply left. 3 blocks away, my phone buzzed with a single text. "You embarrassed me. Stay away tonight." No questions about whether I was okay, no attempt to discuss what happened. Just a demand to stay away, as if I were the one at fault. I ended up at Marshall's place, though calling him a friend might be generous. We used to game together until Melina convinced me it was childish. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a year. But when I showed up at his door, drenched from the drizzle and red-eyed, he didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and let me in. We were sitting on his worn-out couch, munching on stale chips, while I tried to act like I wasn't falling apart in front of a guy who had a Spider-Man lamp glowing in the corner of his living room. The next day, I returned home to grab some clothes, and that's when reality hit me hard. I slid my key into the lock, but it didn't turn. At first, I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. Perhaps the lock was jammed. But no, the locks had been changed. Confused, I knocked. Silence. I rang the doorbell twice. Finally, Melina's voice came through the Ring intercom, distant and mechanical, as if I were just another delivery person. "I need space," she said flatly. "And I need to protect my peace," I shot back, stepping closer to the door. "Are you serious right now? You're locking me out of my own house because I embarrassed you?" She ignored my question and simply added, "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be receiving paperwork soon. I think it's best we take some time to reflect." No anger, no tears, just this icy, detached tone, like she was finalizing a business transaction. I couldn't even see her face. After the intercom clicked off, I stood there for what felt like an eternity, realizing that everything was already in motion. The speed, the precision, it was all too calculated. She had planned this. This wasn't impulsive or reactive. She had contingency plans. And me? I had nothing. I walked away from that door with no idea where I was going, but one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't about embarrassment. It wasn't about my outburst at the party.
She wasn't reacting. She was eliminating a liability before I could uncover something worse. A sinking feeling told me I'd only scratched the surface. That night, sleep eluded me. Not at Marshall's place, not even after I tried drowning my thoughts in 2 warm beers and half a frozen burrito. My mind kept replaying everything in endless loops. The way she laughed at the party, the cold detachment in her voice over the intercom, the quiet confidence that signaled she wasn't reacting impulsively. She was executing a plan. That realization terrified me the most. She wasn't caught off guard. She was prepared. By sunrise, I was pacing. I had nothing to do, nowhere to go, and no tangible proof of what I'd accused her of, just a gut feeling. And the way her face went pale when I mentioned the word trainer? Shouldn't that have been enough to make me walk away? But it wasn't. It never is when you've spent nearly a decade convincing yourself that love means patience and silence. Around noon, I made a decision that was both the worst and the best thing I could have done. I went to her gym, not to confront her. That would have been too obvious. I parked across the street, hidden behind my dusty windshield. Honestly, I felt like a stalker. But something inside me whispered, "Stay." Something told me I'd find what I wasn't ready to face. And I did. At 1:27 p.m., she emerged from the glass doors with him. I knew it was him immediately. Tall, tan, radiating enthusiasm for absolutely nothing. They were laughing, too close, too casual. And then she touched his chest while laughing, as though she'd momentarily forgotten she was married. In that moment, the truth crystallized. This wasn't about protecting her peace. It was about replacing me without hesitation. I remained still, not capturing any images or raising my voice. I simply observed as they entered his vehicle. After waiting for 5 minutes, I circled the block, pulling into the parking lot to position myself next to the dumpster, pretending to belong there. When she exited his car 30 minutes later, this time alone, I stayed frozen in place. She didn't notice me. She walked by, adjusting her leggings and retying her hair without a backward glance. That was when I approached his car. Yes, it sounds irrational, but I needed clarity. The car was unlocked. I opened the passenger door as if entitled, my heart pounding so fiercely that I feared passing out. I refrained from searching extensively. I merely looked. There, sitting innocently in the cup holder like a trap set for me, was a folded receipt. One line stood out, Hotel Day Pass, $7,800, room 213, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. My hands went numb. It was today. It was happening now. I stepped back from the car as though it had burst into flames. In that moment, realization struck hard. Not only was she unfaithful, but her boldness astounded me. The changed locks weren't due to fear. The public humiliations at gatherings weren't coincidental slip-ups. Everything was part of a calculated plan, a quiet campaign designed to portray me as erratic, embarrassing, and overly emotional. So when the truth eventually surfaced, no one would trust my account. And then it hit me, something more painful than all the deceit combined. This wasn't merely betrayal, it was orchestrated manipulation. I convinced myself I'd discard the receipt, vowing not to act impulsively. Yet I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I folded it carefully and tucked it into my wallet, treating it like some cursed artifact. A tangible reminder that the reality I'd evaded all year was staring me directly in the face. For hours that day, I drove aimlessly, not heading anywhere specific, because staying still felt unbearable, as though I might shatter under the weight of it all. Late that night, around 11, an unknown voicemail greeted me. No introduction, just a calm, professional woman's voice stating, "Your checkout from room 213 is scheduled for noon. Please remember to leave your keycard at the desk." That was it. Less than 10 seconds. I replayed the message 5 times before its significance sunk in. She had used my name during check-in. Something within me snapped. Whether fueled by anger or sheer desperation, I called the hotel back. Providing my name, I claimed I'd misplaced the invoice from my earlier stay that day. Without hesitation, the woman on the other end replied, "Not a problem, Mr. Graham. Would you prefer this emailed or printed?" I hesitated before asking her to read off the charges. She recited them matter-of-factly. Room 213, 3 hours. 2 drinks from the mini-fridge. And the second guest listed on the record? Melina Graham. She hadn't even bothered using a fake surname. Her confidence blinded her to the possibility of being caught. She assumed covering her tracks unnecessary. My ears buzzed as I ended the call. Only then did I realize I'd been holding my breath, releasing it with a sharp pang in my chest. Now, undeniable evidence rested in my possession. Proof I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just a hunch or a random clue or even a misplaced receipt. Her name was logged in their system. By mistake, her voice had called me. But the most painful part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the confirmation of what I'd feared all along. She had been using my identity to make her affair more convenient. My name was tangled up in her web of lies. After that revelation, I sat in my car outside Marshall's apartment for an entire hour. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even cry. The only thought circling through my mind was one haunting question. How long had she been using me as her alibi? If it happened once, surely it wasn't the first time. As I sat there, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Her weekend getaways, her business trips, her late-night Zoom meetings, all of it started to make sense. The trainer wasn't just some fleeting fling, he was part of something bigger, something calculated. And somehow, without realizing it, I had wandered straight into the middle of it. 2 days passed after that voicemail, and I didn't contact her, not once. No yelling, no demands, not even forwarding the hotel receipt. It was the silence that made her uneasy. She expected outrage, fireworks, a dramatic confrontation. Instead, I gave her nothing but fog. That's when the calls started coming in. 1 missed call, then another, then 5 in quick succession. No voicemails, just empty rings. I watched the phone buzz silently on the table and didn't pick it up. I wanted her to feel the weight of uncertainty, even as I drowned in it myself. On the 3rd day, she sent a text. "We need to talk. I'm willing to be honest, but only if you're calm." That sentence shattered something inside me. Only if you're calm. That's what you say to someone unstable, someone irrational. In that moment, I realized she wasn't just lying to me. She was shaping me. Crafting a story where I would lose by default. The angry spouse, the insecure partner, the reason she strayed. And worst of all, she knew people would believe her. They always did. But I still needed answers, so I agreed to meet her. Neutral Ground, a diner we used to frequent before our relationship turned cold. I arrived early, choosing a corner booth, and tried to recall what it felt like to sit there in peace. She walked in 10 minutes late, dressed far too elegantly for a casual conversation, as though she still needed to win, even now. She slid into the seat across from me, folded her hands neatly, and said, "I'm not going to lie, but you need to be mature about this." I didn't respond. I simply looked at her, letting the silence stretch between us. Eventually, she filled it herself. She told me his name was Jesse, that it just happened.
that it began last spring after a retreat, that she hadn't planned it, but he made her feel seen. Then came the line I think every betrayed spouse hears at some point. You stopped trying.
I was lonely. I laughed, not out loud, just a quiet exhale through my nose. Because isn't that always the excuse? They were lonely. As if loneliness justified betrayal. As if I hadn't been lonely too, invisible in a marriage where I no longer existed. She claimed it was over with Jesse now, that I had blown everything out of proportion. But her words barely registered. All I could think about was how carefully she had constructed this narrative, how deliberately she had painted me into a corner. And despite the pain, I resolved then and there to take back control, not for her sake, but for mine. The moment I realized she wasn't there to apologize but to manage me, everything shifted. She slid the hotel receipt back across the table with a smirk, her lips curling into that familiar, condescending smile. "Wow," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "You really are obsessive." No apology, no regret, just blame, aimed squarely at me. That's when I stood up and walked out. It wasn't anger propelling me, it was clarity, a painful, shattering clarity. I had never been her partner. I was her shield, her facade, the dependable man she could point to whenever her private indiscretions threatened to spill into the open. I was her excuse, her alibi for everything she did behind closed doors. In that moment, I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom, a clean break from the tangled web of lies and manipulation. But Melina wasn't done playing games. Not yet. After leaving the diner, I felt hollow. Not strong, not healed, just eerily calm. The kind of calm that settles in when you've run out of words to scream. I drove for hours, no destination in mind. No music, no calls, just the rhythmic hum of tires on pavement. I didn't cry. Part of me wanted to, but it felt like my body had locked that part away, terrified I'd unravel completely if I let it out. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the way she looked me in the eye, saw how broken I was, and still tried to twist the narrative to suit her needs. As if losing control mattered more to her than anything else. Nothing could have prepared me for what came next. The following morning, there was a knock at Marshall's door. 2 officers stood there, their faces calm but unreadable. The kind of expression cops wear when they're about to deliver bad news. "Ellis Graham? Yes, we received a call from your wife. She reported concerns about your emotional stability and suggested you might pose a risk to yourself or others." My stomach dropped. This had to be a mistake, right? But no, they were serious. They asked to come in, assured me it was just a wellness check, that Melina had been worried. My mouth went dry. My hands trembled. Melina had made her move. I sat down and answered every question carefully. I told them about the party, the trainer, the hotel receipt. They listened, took notes, asked if I owned any weapons. No. Did I have any intention of harming her or myself? Again, no. I stayed composed because I understood this wasn't about danger. It was about control. She wasn't trying to protect herself. She was trying to silence me before I could expose the truth. After 20 minutes, they left. One of them even apologized, saying he understood how messy separations could get. But the damage was done. She had filed a formal report, ensuring it would linger on record. That evening, I checked my email and found an official notice from her lawyer. She had filed for divorce. Attached was a statement painting me as volatile, emotionally unstable, and unpredictable.
It was a calculated strike designed to undermine my credibility and ensure she emerged unscathed. The irony hit hard. I had spent years being the stable one, the reliable one, while she spun her web of deceit. Now, she was using my silence against me, turning my pain into ammunition. The claim of irreconcilable differences came with a subtle suggestion that I might require counseling to ensure any future interaction would be safe. That one word sent a shiver down my spine. Suddenly, I wasn't just the spouse who had been betrayed, I was the threat. And it all clicked into place. The way she had pushed me at that party, the snide comment in front of her friends, the deliberate provocation, it was all calculated. She needed ammunition, and unwittingly, I had given it to her. What she didn't know, what she could never have imagined, was that I had already gathered evidence. Copies of hotel receipts, call logs, text messages, even security footage from the gym's parking lot, obtained through a friend who used to work there. She had ignited this battle, but now I wasn't just enduring it, I was ready to counter. Walking into the courtroom for the first time felt like stepping into a trap. Her attorney exuded confidence, every detail polished, every argument rehearsed. The affidavit painted me as volatile, reactive, dangerous. The word echoed in my mind, dangerous, as though heartbreak had transformed me into someone unrecognizable. But I came prepared. I presented everything: the hotel receipt bearing her name, the accidental voicemail she left, photos of her entering the hotel with Jesse, a printed transcript of the gym's security log showing their weekly meetings over 3 months under my name. The piece de resistance? A casual selfie she posted on her coaching Instagram that very day, captioned, "Pushing clients to new limits today." The timestamp matched the hours she spent in that hotel room booked under my name. Her lawyer looked visibly shaken. She sat silently, lips pressed tight, eyes darting as each piece of evidence unraveled her narrative. The judge barely glanced at her once I finished presenting my case. His gaze remained fixed on me, not because I was loud or theatrical, but because I was composed. I spoke the truth calmly, without anger or insults. I simply recounted the story she had tried so hard to bury. The ruling was in my favor. No restrictions, no mandated counseling. She was ordered to vacate the house within 30 days, and I was granted ownership of our joint business savings account since she had covertly used marital funds for personal expenses. The day she moved out, she said little. No tears, no apologies. But I wasn't seeking closure anymore. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching as she loaded the last of her belongings into Jesse's car. He avoided eye contact, a coward to the end. When the car finally drove away, I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. That night, I sat alone in the house, truly alone. There was no noise, no accusations, no tension, just silence. But this time, it wasn't oppressive. It was liberating. Melina thought leaving would destroy me, but she didn't take my life. She gave it back. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone attempted to twist reality and you stood your ground, reclaiming the narrative? We've all been there, those moments when the truth feels fragile, as if it's slipping through your fingers, and you suddenly realize you hold the power to set the record straight. Whether it's calling out a lie, exposing hidden intentions, or simply refusing to let someone else control the story, these instances can be defining. Think about that time you discovered undeniable proof, the kind of evidence that makes you catch your breath and say, "Oh, I've gotcha now." Maybe it was an unexpected discovery, like finding a forgotten message or overhearing something you weren't meant to. Perhaps it was a small but significant detail that confirmed what you suspected all along. These are the moments that feel like clarity hitting you like a ton of bricks, giving you the upper hand when you least expect it. Now it's your turn to share. What's the story where you took back control? Was it a conversation that shifted everything, or maybe a physical piece of evidence that changed the game? A photo, a misplaced note, or even an overheard confession can sometimes become the ultimate truth serum. These moments stay with us because they remind us of our strength and resilience when faced with deception. We want to hear about your experiences. When did you refuse to let someone else dictate the terms? How did it feel to take that step toward honesty, no matter how difficult it might have been? These moments often leave a lasting impact, shaping who we are and teaching us valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and self-respect. So go ahead and tell us your story. What was the moment when you held up that metaphorical receipt and said, "Not today"? Your journey could inspire others to do the same when faced with similar challenges. And as always, thank you for being part of this community. Your stories matter, and they help create a space where truth and connection thrive.